God, I condemn you back to hell!
Bathsheba Sherman. Her name has become emblematic in the world of horror movies and the paranormal, as she represents a bridge between documented history and fiction. If you have seen the 2013 film The Conjuring, you will surely remember the witch who tormented the Perron family. But did you know that Bathsheba actually existed in New England in the 19th century? To tell her story, we must first separate historical facts from fiction, which is no easy task. While historical records confirm the existence of a woman named Bathsheba Sherman in Rhode Island during the 1800s, popular folklore describes her as a devil worshiper who sacrificed infants in his name. Over time, rumors, local superstition, and cinematic adaptation transformed her into the wicked being we all know. However, beneath the terrifying image of the Conjuring saga lies a real background, obscured by gaps in information and accounts that were never fully proven. The result is almost a mythical figure. On one hand, a historical character with real foundations. On the other, a vengeful specter that continues to haunt modern audiences. Bathsheba was born in 1812, the daughter of Ephraim Thayer and Hannah Taft, and according to official records, she grew up in the New England region, specifically in Rhode Island. Years later, this place would become famous as the setting for the alleged acts attributed to her by legend. Some believe that Bathsheba might have been related to Mary Town Easty, one of the women executed for witchcraft during the Salem trials in 1692. Concrete evidence of this connection has never been found, but people, eager to fuel the legends, readily accepted the idea that Bathsheba descended from a line of witches. Over time, rumors of witchcraft and satanic rituals gained traction, and many pointed to Bathsheba as the heir to such sinister practices. By 1844, Bathsheba was in her early 30s and married farmer Judson Sherman on March 10th. She moved to his rural home near Harrisville, Rhode Island, where he managed a rather prosperous farm. The records of the time do not provide many details about these early years of marriage. The only certainty is that the couple had one confirmed child, Herbert, born around 1851. However, rumors circulated that Bathsheba had given birth to at least 3 more children, all of whom died in infancy. That string of deaths, which unfortunately was not uncommon given the medical context of the 19th century, sparked local suspicions about the Sherman family. Superstitious people filled in the gaps with stories of demonic pacts, curses, and malevolent forces surrounding Bathsheba. One of the most well-known stories involves a neighborhood child whom Bathsheba was caring for. It is said that the baby died under strange circumstances, with its skull pierced by a small object. Soon, rumors spread that the object had been a sewing needle. This disturbing detail became deeply ingrained in the town's gossip, and it wasn't long before people began claiming that Bathsheba had sacrificed the child to Satan to earn his favor. The truth is that no legal charges were ever filed, and the exact cause of the child's death was never clarified. Medicine at the time was very limited, meaning that no conclusive diagnoses were made. However, mere suspicion was enough to reinforce the growing rumors of witchcraft and satanic practices. Living in a region with a long history associated with witches, the community had no hesitation in labeling Bathsheba as one. Although she was never officially accused, her dark reputation continued to grow, evolving into something increasingly sinister. Some versions of the story claim that Bathsheba sacrificed her own child when he was barely a week old, and that her husband caught her in the middle of the ritual. Upon being discovered and allegedly proclaiming her loyalty to Satan, she is said to have fled, climbed a tree, cursed anyone who tried to claim her land, and hanged herself right then and there. Depending on the version of the story, Bathsheba is said to have died in 1849, just a few years after giving birth to Herbert. Other accounts place her death at different times. However, the official records in Harrisville reveal that she actually passed away on May 25, 1885, at the age of 73. The cause of death was listed as a strange paralysis, which today we might attribute to a stroke or some neurological condition. This further complicates the understanding of what truly happened, as the records confirm that she lived to an old age, while local rumors depict her as having taken her own life much earlier. With the lack of documentation in the passage of so much time, it is virtually impossible to determine with absolute precision what really transpired in the life of Bathsheba Sherman. At this point, the story of the real Bathsheba comes to an end, giving way to the legend that The Conjuring popularized. In the 1970s, the Perron family moved into a farmhouse in Harrisville, unaware that they were stepping onto land that, according to local folklore, had been cursed by Bathsheba. The quiet farm, often referred to as the Old Arnold Estate, had existed since the 18th century and carried a history filled with tragedies, drownings, self-inflicted and unexplained deaths. For those already familiar with the property's reputation, every misfortune that occurred there was seen as further confirmation that Bathsheba's spirit remained active, ready to instill terror in anyone who set foot on her land. In January 1971, Roger and Carolyn Perron, along with their 5 daughters, Andrea, Nancy, Christine, Cindy, and April, purchased the house. Roger, who worked as a truck driver, hoped to find some peace in the home, which he acquired at an attractive price considering its size. However, neither he nor his family could have imagined that their new home harbored paranormal forces. Almost from the very first night, small things began to make themselves known. Strange sounds coming from empty rooms, objects disappearing and reappearing in different places, and even cold spots. At first, the Perrons dismissed these occurrences as isolated incidents. But over time, the atmosphere in the house became suffocating, something neither Roger nor Carolyn could fully explain. The daughters soon began speaking about nighttime apparitions. Andrea, the eldest, claimed to see a female figure with a twisted neck, which appeared to be the spirit of someone who had died by hanging. Cindy spoke of childlike presences, including a boy named Oliver. Meanwhile, April befriended another ghostly child named Rory. The idea that these spirits of children were trapped in the house became a constant theme, and for a while Roger tried to ignore what his daughters were saying, believing they were merely childhood imaginations. However, once he himself witnessed paranormal events, he became convinced that something real was happening. The family's pet, a dog named Sadie, refused to enter the house, instead crying and barking from outside. Not long after, one morning, they found her dead in the backyard. Those who have investigated the Perron case almost unanimously agree that this event marked the first truly brutal attack by the entity inhabiting the house. From that point on, the family's concerns grew. Carolyn began waking up with bruises she had no memory of getting. At first, they seemed like minor injuries, but within weeks they became larger and more pronounced, accompanied by a draining fatigue. It was as if something was feeding on her vitality. The Perron family story became famous when they decided to seek the help of Ed and Lorraine Warren, a couple dedicated to investigating supernatural and demonic cases. Ed identified himself as a demonologist, while Lorraine was a clairvoyant with a heightened sensitivity to spirits. By 1971, they had already spent years investigating paranormal phenomena, and when they arrived at the Perrons' farmhouse, Lorraine immediately sensed a presence she described as filled with hatred. This indicated that it was not just an ordinary ghost, but something far more dangerous. After conducting their investigation, they concluded that the main malevolent force was none other than Bathsheba Sherman. According to the Warrens' investigations, Bathsheba lived in the house during the 19th century and was accused, though never formally tried, of witchcraft or murder. The Warrens deduced that Bathsheba had fixated on Carolyn precisely because of her role as a mother, making her the perfect victim for a revenge fueled by envy. In Bathsheba's twisted mind, the house was her property, and forcing Carolyn to repeat an atrocious act symbolized the blasphemous cycle that allegedly began when Bathsheba herself offered her baby to Satan. From that point on, the Perrons experienced increasingly terrifying phenomena. Clocks stopping at 3:07 a.m., the so-called Devil's Hour, knocking sounds in groups of 3 on doors and walls, interpreted as a mockery of the Holy Trinity, doors slamming shut on their own, and foul odors that would appear and vanish suddenly. Christine, one of the daughters, felt something invisible grabbing her leg at night. The entity seemed to have the power to create illusions, such as footsteps in empty hallways, wardrobes opening on their own, and revealing something terrifying for just a fleeting moment. Carolyn, on the other hand, was becoming increasingly bruised and weakened. Lorraine Warren strongly sensed Bathsheba's presence and even came to believe that the spirit followed her to her own home. Whether this was reality or mere rumor, it was enough to terrify the Perrons, who were convinced their lives were in danger. The Warrens sought approval from the Catholic Church to perform an exorcism, and in the midst of this process, Bathsheba decided to escalate her attacks. One night when the Warrens were away, Bathsheba turned her attention to Ed and Lorraine's home, where their daughter, Judy, was staying. The Warrens kept Annabelle, a doll possessed by a demonic entity, locked inside a special glass case. In the Conjuring film version, Bathsheba manages to release Annabelle and temporarily allies with the demon inhabiting the doll to attack Judy. Although Ed arrived just in time to save his daughter, the incident demonstrated that Bathsheba had the ability to manipulate other malevolent entities or, at the very least, coordinate actions with them. With this attack, she made it clear that her influence extended beyond the physical boundaries of the Harrisville farmhouse. Meanwhile, back at the Perron estate, Bathsheba continued preparing for her final act, completely possessing Carolyn. As the mother grew weaker, she experienced episodes where she lost track of time or behaved strangely, as if another would have taken over her body. Eventually, the witch succeeded in taking full control of Carolyn. At this point, we see Carolyn taking Christine and April back into the house with the intention of killing them in the basement, reenacting the sacrifice that Bathsheba had been accused of. The actual timeline may be somewhat different, but the event described by the Perrons fits the same idea. The witch wanted to recreate her past crime through Carolyn. At that crucial moment, Lorraine and Ed, supported by Roger, the local police, and a few helpers, struggled to take the daughters away and remove Carolyn from the house. However, Bathsheba exerted such power over her that her skin burned, and the pain intensified every time they tried to cross the threshold. Lorraine realized that if they forced her out, Bathsheba would kill her instantly, so they decided to perform the exorcism right there. In the movie, the scene is quite intense. They tie Carolyn to a chair, and the witch, speaking through her body, reveals a decayed face, laughing and shrieking infernally. The witch momentarily escapes and attempts to complete the sacrifice of one of the daughters. But Ed shouts her name and condemns her to hell, while Lorraine appeals to Carolyn's maternal love, reminding her of a happy day at the beach with her family. That spark of humanity helps Carolyn break free from the possession. In the movie, this is how Bathsheba loses control of the possession, and her spirit is banished. Despite living through a nightmare, the Perron family decided to stay in the house until 1980 due to financial reasons. Andrea Perron recounted these events in her book series, House of Darkness, House of Light, stating that she is convinced Bathsheba was responsible for everything. Skeptics, on the other hand, argue that the Warrens were prone to theatricality and that Bathsheba's story is riddled with contradictions. Andrea acknowledges that the film exaggerates some incidents, with added blood and jump scares, but insists that, at its core, the paranormal experience was real. At this point, it's important to ask, how much of this story is true? Official records contradict the claim that Bathsheba hanged herself in the mid-19th century and state that she died in 1885 from an apparent stroke or neurological illness, far from the satanic ritual she is accused of. Andrea Perron has even suggested that the entity that tormented them may not have been Bathsheba, but rather another woman who hanged herself in the barn in 1797. However, the name Bathsheba Sherman became the most widely recognized, especially after the success of The Conjuring. Her brief appearances in sequels, such as her interaction with the Annabelle doll, solidified her image as a demonic witch. For many, this may all be fiction. For others, Bathsheba's presence could have been real, and her story continues to live on in American paranormal culture. Within the Conjuring universe, Bathsheba represents something different from the classic demons that were never human. She is a hybrid between the ghost of a woman and of being aligned with demonic forces, capable of forcibly possessing people, causing physical harm, manipulating objects, and even forming alliances with other malevolent entities. Her interference in the Annabelle case suggests that she has some knowledge of other entities. This role reinforces the movie's message that the spiritual world can be a place filled with evil, where different entities conspire to spread terror. There are different versions of what happened after the Perron family left. Some believe that the exorcism permanently banished Bathsheba, while others claim that her spirit still haunts the place. In the movie storyline, the ending suggests that the witch is defeated, yet for some reason her spirit remains sealed inside the music box, despite Ed Warren condemning her to hell. One way or another, the audience feels that Bathsheba is still present within the Conjuring universe, and she may even appear in the new installment set to release this September. Among the list of real-life figures turned into movie antagonists, Bathsheba is one of the most striking cases because the story of her supposed evil has overshadowed all verifiable details of her existence. Anyone who watches The Conjuring will immediately picture a malevolent witch who sacrifices children. Perhaps the historical Bathsheba was simply a strong-willed woman who endured the hardships of her time, or she may have suffered tragedies like any other family of that era. But history has immortalized her as a mother who sacrificed her own child, cursed the land, and returned as a vengeful specter. Regardless of one's perspective, the Perron family undeniably experienced something strange in that house, something that left a lifelong mark on the daughters, especially Andrea, who claims that her mother was never able to establish herself as the lady of the house, because Bathsheba relentlessly attacked her. Roger, in contrast, fits the classic role of a skeptic who initially refused to believe in the supernatural but eventually surrendered to the overwhelming evidence. In cinema, Bathsheba's legend perfectly encapsulates the elements of a great horror movie. An old house with a tragic past, a supposed witch tied to dark forces, and a large family that, one by one, falls victim to her menace. It also reminds us how easily women were, and sometimes still are, accused of witchcraft when babies became sick or died, especially in times when medical knowledge was scarce. The harshness of rural life in New England and the frequent deaths of infants often fueled supernatural explanations. So in the end, there is no simple way to separate the real Bathsheba from the fictional one. What is undeniable is that, in the universe created by James Wan and the Warrens, she stands as one of the most unsettling and aggressive presences seen in the franchise, aside from the demons themselves, of course. One way or another, Bathsheba's story showcases the stark contrast between the limited historical evidence and the rumors of an extremely superstitious society which have turned her into a cinematic monster. She may rest in a forgotten grave in Rhode Island, but her name has transcended through the centuries, thanks to Andrea Perron's books and James Wan's films. At this point, I hope you found this exploration of Bathsheba Sherman's real history and cinematic adaptation as fascinating as I did. But what do you think? Do you believe her legend is based on some genuine event? Or is it just a case of rumors that grew over time? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories and analyses like this one. See you next time! Hey, don't go just yet. If you enjoyed my video, I'd love to recommend another one for you to watch.